Cities of the dead. The name the necropolises of Alexandria received due to their enormous size. They're a vast network of underground passages, chambers and galleries. Today I'll take you underground to the city's most magnificent, best preserved catacombs. Hello from Alexandria, the rich and powerful, multicultural capital of the ancient Mediterranean world continued to flourish under Roman rule. Alexandria ad Aegyptum was meant to be a culturally Greek island surrounded by the ocean of Egyptianness, a force of such magnitude that it proved irresistible. Especially tempting to its Greek and Roman inhabitants were the ancient Pharaonic Funerary beliefs. As you'll see, the Alexandrians may have preferred to live like Greeks, but die like Egyptians. Let's go! The entrance to the catacombs is located in Shoqafa Park, the ancient western necropolis. Shoqafa means Mount of Shards. At the time of discovery, the area was covered with a thick layer of broken pottery, remnants from Roman funeral feasts. The underground passages were discovered by accident in 1900, when the earth suddenly split open and standing in the street donkey disappeared into a crevice. It turned out to have fallen into a 30-meter-long access shaft. So it wasn't an archaeologist, but pure chance that returned to the public eye one of Alexandria's most important archaeological sites, large hypogeum carved of solid limestone during the Antonine era, at the turn of the 1st and 2nd centuries AD. Wow, it's mind-blowing that we know that we can admire all these wonderful things thanks to donkey. The catacombs have 3 levels, the lowest of which, unfortunately, is still underwater. As you will see, they are totally unique, not only for Egypt. Like no other structure, they reflect the spirit of this extraordinary city. I must show you the oldest part of the catacombs. Originally, the hypogeum was created as a tomb for a single family, likely very wealthy and influential, judging by the scale. The main tomb, the focal point of the complex. All the corridors and numerous chambers seemed to grow around it. It was designed like an underground Greek temple, with the burial chamber as a naos and a vestibule preceding it. It was surrounded by spacious banqueting halls and storage rooms. However, despite its classical plan, the architectural elements are clearly inspired by Egyptian Pharaonic tradition. Combined with Greco-Roman decorative elements, it creates a unique style. Simply Alexandrian. In opposite niches of the pronaos, we see 2 nearly life-size figures, female and male, most likely representing the tomb's patrons. The figures don't wear Roman robes, but Egyptian ones. Only the traditional hairstyle of the anonymous woman suggests the tomb dates to the second half of the 1st century AD. Unfortunately, unlike Egyptian pharaonic tombs, there are no hieroglyphic text or royal cartouches here, which make dating the monuments so much easier. On both sides of the front wall are dual protective symbols, Greek and Egyptian. Beneath the aegis, the shield of Zeus, armed with a gorgonean, we see the intriguing figure of a bearded serpent. This is Agathos daimon, that is noble spirit, so characteristic of Alexandrian theology. This protective deity was one of the guardians of Alexandria. likely considered an aspect of Serapis himself. Among his attributes is the caduceus, entwined with 2 snakes, the staff of divine heralds, particularly associated with the Greek Hermes. The 2 pylons on which the 2 snakes rest probably refer to the Pharaonic concept of Akhet, the horizon, as a mystical passage to the afterlife. According to legend, when Alexander founded the city in 332 BC, many local snakes took refuge among the stones of the new buildings, becoming agathoi daimones, benevolent spirits guarding the inhabitants. On the interior wall, the doorway is guarded by the 2 figures of Anubis, the ancient guardian of the dead. This is Anubis in Roman style. As a deity, he is depicted in the armor worn by generals and emperors, the lorica musculata, that is, muscle cuirass. In contrast to the god depicted in contrapposto on the right, on the left we see an anguipede representation of Anubis. Anguipede, meaning snake feet, is a quite popular image of deities in the Greco-Roman period, having serpentine legs. Perhaps a syncretic form of Anubis Agathos daimon, or simply a funerary version of the protective serpent. The pair of Anubises seem to fulfill functions within the interior similar to those of the agathoi daimones outside. Anubis watches over and protects the space of the dead, just as Agathos daimon protects the living. Of course, the double depiction of Anubis guarding the entrances to the burial chambers is deeply rooted in Pharaonic tradition. However, in Roman times, particularly emphasized was his new role, a guardian of the entrance to the realm of the dead, the canine guardian of the afterlife. A triclinium-shaped chamber with arcuate niches was carved entirely into the rock, including the sarcophagi. The latter are consistent with Roman style. The garlands form 2 hanging wreaths featuring hanging grapes and the head of Medusa. In striking contrast, the image on the back wall of the central niche depicts, or rather loosely refers to, the traditionally Egyptian mythological scene of Anubis mummifying the deceased. These scenes reflect the incomplete knowledge of Egyptian concepts among the Roman elite. Instead of Isis and Nephthys, the embalming is assisted by Horus and Thoth. And the mummy's mask clearly shows a false beard. As we know, a beard is an attribute reserved exclusively for the pharaohs in dynastic art. No other man, even upper-class one, was allowed to wear it. These inconsistencies, as well as the figure's clothing and attributes, as well as the absence of one of the canopic jars, we've got here 3 instead of 4, indicate a lack of deeper understanding of pharaonic beliefs and traditions among Romans. This scene had more magical than theological value. It doesn't illustrate any sacred text or ceremony. According to some, the artist chose an exotic motif solely for the decorative appeal of the figures. Honestly, I don't think so. The decorative program here is too consistent. On the next wall, we see a relief depicting the living god, the Apis bull, adored by the emperor pharaoh. In Greco-Roman times, Apis played a central role in Egyptian religiosity, as then zealotry and idolatry were flourishing. The sacred bull of Memphis, a living image of the great creator Ptah, his avatar, was worshipped for thousands of years, perhaps back in the early dynastic times. In Roman times, the dead as well as the living Apis also represented Osiris. The two co-created the person of the supreme syncretic god Serapis, king of the Egyptian pantheon since Ptolemaic times. Isis, standing behind the bull, raises her wings in a defensive gesture and holds in her hand, symbolizing divine law and cosmic balance, the feather of Maat. A nearly identical scene adorns the opposite wall. So we've got here the greatest holies, the pharaoh emperor, Maat, Apis, and above all, Isis, whose cult then already reached its apogee, and Isis will remain the most important of the goddesses until the full Christianization of Egypt. Pharaonic funerary depictions formerly illustrated the rituals and spells necessary for the deceased to reach the afterlife, while those dating to the post-dynastic period did not. The owners of this tomb weren't interested in accurately representing ancient Egyptian ideology. Instead, they were creating a new, hybrid religious view of their own. The clearest manifestations of this view survive in the funerary world of Alexandria. Without breaking with their own traditions, the Greeks, Macedonians, and Romans early recognized the primacy of Egyptian funerary religion. To reach other rooms, we must pass through this high rotunda, which serves as a central courtyard. Access to any other part of the catacombs without first entering the rotunda is impossible. This large circular shaft surrounded by a spiral staircase, originally unroofed, provided some light and ventilation to the underground. I must admit that although still and dusty, as is common in catacombs, the air is much more pleasant than the one I breathed in the catacombs of Rome, larger but darker and very stuffy. Of course, I never had the chance to film them for you. That requires special permission from the Vatican, which owns the Roman catacombs. No chance. I wasn't aware that there are so many secret passages. I would have prepared myself. And you know that if I see one, I can't resist. I'm so sorry, guys. I didn't realize that I moved like this until I saw the footage. I guess I didn't want to ruin my favorite pants. Anubis! How did you get here, you little one? Surprise! It scared me. The tomb originally featured cisterns and storerooms, which were later transformed into mass tombs, the galleries filled with rows of loculi, long narrow niches cut into the wall, sealed with limestone or terracotta slabs. The names and sometimes the ages of the deceased were written in Greek on the loculi slab seals. This tomb was originally intended for only one family, but as of now there have been found over 300 loculi. In the following centuries, these galleries were carved around the main tomb. But more were buried here. Sometimes not one, but two bodies were placed in the loculus, often mummified. During excavations in 1941, completely intact burials were discovered, including what were considered double burials of priestesses of Psyche. Their eyes, tongues, and fingernails were ritually covered with gold flakes. The latest remains date back to the 4th century AD, as evidenced by coins found with them. We now enter the so-called Hypogeum tomb, or Hall of Caracalla. Tomb robbers made their own entrance, connecting these to once separate hypogia. Just next to the passage carved by the robbers, we see the so-called Persephone tomb, and on its wall a scene with Greek and Egyptian eschatological motifs. The abduction of Persephone on the lower register, and the resurrection of Osiris on the upper register. A classic Roman painting and a painting imitating Pharaonic style on the same wall. Bones and mummies have been found here, but not urns containing ashes. Although cremation was quite popular among the Greeks, the Egyptians considered it sacrilege. Destruction of the body prevented the deceased from entering the afterlife, so this tradition was gradually abandoned. Both Greeks and Romans mummified their dead until late antiquity, although they didn't use the sophisticated methods known from the New Kingdom or the Third Intermediate Period. By the way, I recommend my podcast about mummification in ancient Egypt. You'll find the link in the description. Let's remember that the two cultures began to interact with each other as early as the 7th century BC. From the late period onward, Greeks settled in Egypt, initially in Naucratis, Egypt's most important seaport at the time, and in Memphis, Egypt's cosmopolitan capital. Greek settlements were established primarily in the Nile Delta and the Fayum oasis. Alexandria was also founded as a Greek city. The Romans called it Alexandria et Aegyptum, meaning by Egypt rather than in Egypt. To preserve their Hellenic identity, the Ptolemies pursued a policy of cultural separation here. Divisions based on ethnic criteria were also cultivated by the Romans. At the top of the Roman social hierarchy in Egypt stood those who held Roman citizenship. Next came the Astai, belonging to the city, residents of major Hellenistic cities like Alexandria, Naucratis, and Ptolemais, now located in eastern Libya. The lowest class Alexandrians were, of course, Egyptians, although they have always been the majority in the city. As Greeks increasingly assimilated, for example through intermarriage, their Hellenistic customs and traditions blended with local Egyptian ones. This phenomenon reached its climax during Roman times. Although Alexandria's multi-ethnic inhabitants continued to aspire to Greek culture, which was associated with social advancement, Roman Alexandria increasingly took on a completely new, distinctive Alexandrian identity. A magnificent example of this can be seen on the surface. Currently, the area above the catacombs is a kind of open-air museum, with several tombs originally located elsewhere in Alexandria, having been relocated here. Here we find funerary monuments, such as stelae, altars and columns, often placed above the tombs of the elite, as well as house tombs, sometimes multi-roomed and monumental. The columns, capitals and entablature friezes allude to Greek architectural principles. At the same time, their interiors were decorated with Egyptianizing wall paintings, and sometimes with symbols imitating Pharaonic hieroglyphs. The so-called tomb of Tigran Pasha was most likely built during the reign of Hadrian in the first half of the 2nd century. Originally located in the eastern necropolis, the burial chamber was moved to Kom el-Shoqafa, located in the western necropolis, and incorporated into a modern building, imitating the tomb's original shape. In the burial chamber, we see again 3 arched niches, this time with perfectly preserved paintings. The central niche depicts a mummy flanked by female figures. These are believed to be priestesses representing Isis and Nephthys. The mummy doesn't appear to represent Osiris, as it lacks any divine attributes. It's wrapped in reticulated bandaging, typical of the Roman times. Holding palm branches, the women perform the funeral ritual. Behind them are Horus falcons placed on alabaster stands. The symbolism depicted on the walls may suggest that the deceased was a worshipper of Isis, initiated into the mysteries of her cult. The scene in the left niche is titled Victory over Death and depicts a man holding palm branches, one of the symbols of the Hellenized cult of Isis. The scene in the right niche, Becoming an Initiate, is meant to depict the culminating moment of the mysterious Isiac initiation. Although the scenes were given an Egyptian context, the artist wasn't inspired by the Pharaonic style, as we can see. Such frescoes on the ceiling, imitating a dome and rich in animal and floral motifs, are, according to art historians, characteristic of Hadrian's times. On the ceiling, a central oculus in the form of an apotropaic gorgoneon, additionally protecting the tomb from above. Gorgons, like the mythological Medusa, were commonly placed in Roman tombs and sarcophagi as protection, among others against tomb robbers. As seen in the main tomb of the Catacombs, bearded serpents, agatoi daimones, flank the entrance, protecting the tomb. In the entrance corridor, we see 2 male figures placed beneath the image of the Apis bull. Dressed in kilts and corsets, they wear the Nemes crown, and the narrow lines under their chins also indicate the pharaoh's false beard. Do they represent the emperor, or perhaps the tomb's owner, who, according to ancient beliefs, after death could be reborn in Osiris? Osiris, who represented the deceased rulers of Egypt. Hard to say. In Roman Alexandria, new meanings were given to old symbols, thereby creating extraordinary and unique, syncretic eschatological narratives. The Egyptian masses tended to resist Hellenistic influences, but Alexandria, that's a different story. Here, the Greek elite was too strong, the foreigners too numerous. The cultural melting pot gave birth to a new, unique identity, and funerary beliefs became more complex than in the rest of Egypt. As we can see, On the ground we can admire a quite impressive collection of Roman sarcophagi belonging to the city's wealthy citizens. These beautiful marble sarcophagi, decorated on the sides with mythological reliefs, became popular in Rome during the era from which the catacombs we've just seen originate, that is, from the time of Trajan and Hadrian. The word sarcophagus literally means flesh-eater in Greek. Some classical Greek authors mistakenly believed that certain types of stone had the special ability to absorb the soft tissues of the deceased. Originally, their remains were placed inside them temporarily for a few years, and after the bones were removed, they could be used by other deceased. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy our historical adventures and want to help me continue this, please join my Patreon community, link below the video. Please like, comment and share my video with your friends. I'd like to thank all the supporters of my channel, especially my dear patrons. Thanks to you I can create this content. And if you're new here, I recommend my podcast about ancient Egyptian beliefs and history, where I explore in detail the cosmology and myths of ancient Egypt. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel to be up to date with new episodes. See you on another ancient site.